Hello, welcome back. Today we're going to try to explain Redux and its components, its concepts, and try to make it a little like I'm gonna be doing comparisons with things that may or may not make sense, but the goal here is for you to understand Redux, no matter if I'm right or wrong when I'm doing these comparisons. I want you to understand Redux and be able to use it once this video is over. So thank you for clicking play. So let's see. Redux comes out of a necessity, and that necessity is that you can have a counter. I'm not going to change this. Let's say that count is a state that if it doesn't exist, my manager is going to fire me. Why? Because he loves counters. He loves counters. And he's gonna fire me, and probably he's gonna kill me and my family, okay? So count in this case is very important, right? Because otherwise I'm gonna get fired. And I want this state to be shared among the components of my application. So let's see. Let's create a sun, a component called sun, okay? This is going to be a functional component, so it's const sun equals to another function, and this is going to return this, and here we're gonna show the count. It is count, not counter, count. Okay, so we need count from the props. You can do, I think it is like props count. You can do this, but everybody's gonna say that you don't know anything about JavaScript nor React, so you use deconstruction. So we use deconstruction this way. This is basically the same as doing const count equals to props dot, oh my god, props dot count is the same. It's the same doing this. That is called deconstruction. Okay, so we are deconstructing the prop count, and we're going to show count, and we need to export this. If you saw my latest video, the previous video, we're going to export this, and this is going to be export default sun, right? You can add or not the semicolon. So the sun, I can import sun from sun, and then I can show my sun here, and the count is a prop that it needs, and it's going to be the same as the one I have up here, and everything should be fine. This is showing the sun. The sun is the one showing the counter. Do you see? If I add here absolutely like This is showing the counter. It is the counter from the father, from the parent, from app. Okay, so let's say this son has a grandson. A grandson. Is that a way to write grandson? Grandson, no, grandson. Yeah, grandson is grandson in English meaning it means the son or okay, yeah, grandson. The grandson, and it is actually a complete word, so we don't need to use camel case here. It's a grandson. .jsx, and then we are doing const grandson equals to, I need a counter as well, and we can do a return. I always do this and add a fragment just to not get messy. A fragment is nothing but part of JSX that has no style, nothing. If div was a div, it will have a style inherited by default. Depending on the browser, it will have a different style. I think it is inline block or block display, but that's not what we're here for. We're here for the counter, and it's not counter, I'm realizing, it's count. So the son is going to import the grandson because he needs his grandson. Imagine him without his grandson. Oh my god, he suffered a lot. I know the story about this guy, and it's not a good thing, not a good story. Sad as hell. Okay, so grandson, and as the son is going to give to the grandson the count as well. So we wanted to now render grandson, but it is a component, dude. What are you doing? Grandson, and it takes a prop, which is count, and it is count. Okay, makes sense? Makes sense or not? For some reason, this thing, something happened with count. Grandson is count. Import grandson, count. Okay, the grandson is showing the count. So I think son is count, then grandson is count. what is happening. Let's see the console. Okay, so it says, okay, no BS. I'm not gonna edit that. In order for you to import grandson, you need to export default grandson. And I'm not going to edit that. That's why this is no BS. And now the grandson is showing the count, okay? The grandson is showing the count. The son is showing the grandson. And the app is showing the son. So this is what we call prop drilling. Prop drilling. Prop drilling. That's the problem. Actually, this is an interview question as well. If somebody asks you what is a prop drilling, you just want to say, you can use the son and grandson example. You can say, it is when you pass the state as a prop to the son, and then the son pass the state as pass the prop to the grandson as a prop. So you see the problem here? The state is in the grandfather, which is app count. It is passing the state as a prop to the son. The son is taking the prop and is passing the prop to count. Sorry, to the grandson as a count. That is prop drilling. That's not very, let's say, ideal. So there is when we need to use either React context. I never liked React context, but we can have a video about that later. But today is about about Redux. So Redux, let's say Redux has 3 core things. The first is the store. Think about the store as this. But the store is going to be available from every part of the application, okay? The store is going to be available from every component inside the app. Sorry. And we have the store, we have actions, and we have reducers. This is where it gets convoluted. This is where it gets weird. I remember when somebody explained this to me, I was like, why? I mean, why torture yourself doing all of this? Well, at the end, it makes sense. So the store, the store is the global variable. Think about the store as a global variable, okay? So it's a global state. It's a global state. And the action is a thing that is composed of 2 elements, which are the type, which is the name, and is the type is nothing but the name and the slice that it has. This is going to make sense in the future, I promise. And the payload is what you are going to do, okay? And the payload is the charge, the is what you're going to be using, like to pass it to the reducer. It's gonna make sense, I hope. So the reducer is nothing than a changeable a state modifier, but remember the state never mutates. It just gets replaced by another object. So it is the state changer, the reducer, and it takes the state and it takes the action. Okay, so the action has the type. Depending on the type, we're going to apply the payload to the state. It is confusing, I know, but not once we nail down this count being available everywhere, you're going to be like, oh, okay, that makes sense. So let's start our setup for Redux. Just for transparency, it's been a while since I wrote Redux from scratch, but I think we're gonna need two files. The first one is gonna be store.js. Okay, store.js. This is a folder, dude. What are you doing? Store. The store is gonna have, let's call it an index. Yes. And here's where the magic begins, because we are going to configure the store. But first we need to install Redux. So we can either go to Google, but let's see if I remember. pm install Redux Toolkit. npm Redux Toolkit. Oh my god, I need an I, of course. Oh, I know what's happening. I know what's happening, and I think it is because my npm installer is tied to an AWS account. Otherwise, Redux install Redux, because this is correct, right? Yeah, this is correct. So if this is failing, is because oh, okay, so I was missing a JS. See? No BS. I was missing a JS. So we need Redux Toolkit. Why? Because it makes easier Redux. It really made it like more understandable and more less boilerplate code, less amount and bush of codes and code that you don't need just for the setup. So Redux Toolkit introduced the concept that we already had about the slices. The store has slices, and the reducers are in a very pretty way introduced into the slices. So we are going to make use of this. I think we need, I'm not sure if we need Redux alone. I don't think so. So if I remember correctly, we need to import we need to configure the store. Okay, so config store from Redux Toolkit, and the store is configured with reducers, if I remember correctly. Const store equals to configure store, and the options, yeah, reducer, and here we're gonna add our reducer. Okay, it needs reducer. I don't recall if this is a multiple reducer, like if I can do add multiple reducers, but if we cannot, there's a tool for that on the Redux, which is combine reducers. But for now, we're gonna do this. This is asking for a reducer, so we need the reducer for count. Let's call it count slice. Okay, so we need to import what I think really changed the game for Redux, which is the create slice from Redux Toolkit. And then we can come here and say const count slice equals to create slice, and then the options, right? And the options are, if I remember correctly, is the name. The name is gonna be count. Then I think it is the initial state. We're gonna start with 0. Okay. And then the reducers. Right? So what did we say about the reducers? The reducers take actions, and the actions actually with Redux Toolkit are being created here. We are creating the actions here. In the past, you will need to create the actions with the switch case in a very weird way, and now with this slice is, first of all, is slicing the global state, the store, and creating a count slice. Then it is saying, okay, the initial state for count is 0, right? And the reducers allow us to create actions. So let's create the increment, for instance. Increment, and the increment takes the state and the action. Right. And as we said, the action has a type and a payload. So yeah, let's see, it says payload and type, and state is declared but it's never read. Okay, so Toolkit does something very great, that is it under the hood. It has some library called immer that allows you to do something like this. Let's call this incrementBy so the action makes sense, and we're gonna add a state equals state plus action payload. Okay, so it's gonna be incremented by the payload of that action. This is a reducer, takes the state, takes an action, the action has a type, internally it's gonna recognize the type, and it's going to be an increment by. If we have an increment by, we can have a decrement by, and this is going to be less, right? Remember, this is not being mutated. When they ask you, because this can come up in an interview, when they ask you, is this state being mutated? You say no, it's just the magic of Toolkit using immer, and is allowing me to say equals to something. But what is actually happening is that it is creating a new object and it is assigning it to a state, like the old times, like let me quickly say, like state, then count, and then will be, you get the point. So this is not being mutated, it's just the slice magic. And another thing that the slices introduced in our world is that the actions, these are reducers, but also they are actions. I know this is kind of confusing, but it's gonna make sense when we use them. So we need to export the count slice dot reducer this is saying that const reducers. This is not showing an error, but yeah, well, actually what is the common practice here is to default export the reducer, like this, export default reducer, and we need to export the actions, and for that we can do export counter slice dot actions dot decrement by, and then why is this showing an error? Oh yeah, because we will need to do some magic here, like that. But even that is very buggy. So what we do is to deconstruct the actions from the count slice. So increment by, decrement by equals to count slice dot actions, and we can export this locally, hopefully. And this is saying that is expecting why is this saying that? I think it's because we need to set like const, and yeah, we need to define the exporting const. These are being defined. So far I think it's fairly to it's fair to say that you can be confused right now, but the thing is, the only thing you need to know right now is that you created an action. Well, yeah, you created an action and a reducer at the same time thanks to create slice. And when you, for instance, the name of this is probably gonna be like count increment by, and because of this is global, the store is going to get this and then dispatch that action. So I'm just telling you what happens under the hood of Redux, okay? So as this is exported as default, we can now import it and we can name it whatever we want, but let's say count slice from count slice, and the reducer this is looking for is count slice. And remember, because this is being exported default, reducer, the reducer of the counter slice being exported default, we don't need curly brackets here or anything. We just need this, and then we have our store configured, right? So next step, the app needs to be surrounded by a provider. A provider is what makes all of this work. So we can do it in the main. I like to do it in the main. Sometimes it is called index, I don't know why, but I like doing it in the main. Remember, strict mode, I don't like to use it on depth mode because it's gonna be very possible that in production doesn't even exist. So we need to import our store. Import the store is here, the store. So we need to import store from store. I think we can leave it like that because it's an index. And by default, I think this thing is gonna look for indexes. Let's say if it works. Let's see. Store from store. If it doesn't, we need to add the index, but I think it will work like that. And then we need to create the provider, and the provider comes from Redux So instead of writing the import, I'm gonna let the IDE to do it for me. Provider from Redux. And what else does it need? It needs the store, and the store is there. And we need to wrap this around the app. We don't need the oh yeah, this is not running like that. Okay, the store is not being exported. See, so export default store. So this should work now. Yeah. So what's going to happen with the son and the grandson and the app? Well, there are two functions. Well, there are actually hooks. There are two hooks. How do you determine what is a hook? A hook is a function that starts with use, and something. This is a hook. You need to name it like that. Camel case, use, lowercase, uppercase s, and then something. So we need two hooks from React Redux. The first one, well, it depends where do we want to show it. But let's say that the count, we don't need this anymore, okay? Because we have a count starting with 0, I think, yeah, in Redux, right? So what do we need in order to get something from the store? You need a selector. That's what you need. You need a selector. So you need to use import useSelector, and it is not default exported from what I'm seeing. So you need to use useSelector from React Redux. Let's see if this is fine. Yeah, this disappeared because it doesn't exist anymore. The count is what we are going to use the selector for. So we have the state, okay? We already said that it was the global variable. And the state now has a slice called count, okay? So how do I show this? By using a selector. And what is a selector? That's why this is kind of that's the reason for this being complex, because a selector, and you're like, why? But it makes sense once you understand it. Like everything, right? So how do I accomplish this? You need a selector. You already have the hook for using a selector. The selector is gonna look a lot like this. The selector takes a callback. Okay, remember that a callback is nothing but a function passed to the the callback is nothing but a function passed as a parameter of another function. So we're going to use a callback. And the state, let's create the const selector. Is going to be a function. Let's see if it works like that, like this. Selector is, it has the state and then state count. This is the selector. This is a selector right here. Okay, this is the selector of the state. What we had here, the state count. This is the way to get it with this selector. But we're not finished. We need to use this selector in order to get it. So const count equals to useSelector selector. And this count should be available for us. Apparently not. useSelector state count count state count count. It is using the selector. What are we missing? The app is wrapped inside the provider, and the selector is using the state that count. Maybe if I do this, okay. Okay, so the slice count, the count slice, yeah, it is using the root state. Is using the root state, and that is because reducer counter reducers. Now we need count. Let's see what the console says. Okay, reducer is required argument and must be a function or an object. Okay, so reducer gets count slice. Remember, this is no BS, so you're gonna be looking at me having issues. Okay, so what we can do here, so everything is well organized. The error is that the count slice is just doing this, so it shouldn't be like that. It should be count. I mean, we can use the state as the only, like the state has a 0 and that's it, is a count. But no, that's not the correct way to do it. So you need to change this for count and this for count. So now when we go here, we have our selector state.count, and the selector is working. You can have a folder full of selectors. You can have you can have a folder full of selectors, or you can even do it like this: state.count. The same, right? So now we learn how to do the state.count. Okay, we learn how to do this. So now, how do I dispatch? Well, I just gave it away. How do I increment the counter? Any ideas? No? Okay. So in order to modify the store, we need to dispatch an action to the store. That sounds pretty fancy, but it's nothing but applying our actions to the store. And for that, we need the dispatcher. So const dispatch equals to useDispatch. And I hope it imports it from Redux. And it is just a hook that receives nothing. Okay? So in order to use the actions, you need to import the actions. So you need to import the actions from the store and from the counter slice. Okay, so from store and then count. No, wait, we are here with the store and then the count slice, and we should be able to import the functions. Yeah, decrementBy and incrementBy. So we import the actions from the counter because they are being exported. The count slice actions are exported. Okay, so how do we use the actions? We need to dispatch them. How do we dispatch them? We need the dispatcher. We have the dispatcher. How do we use the dispatch? We can use it on a click. So let's add here an increment button on click. You're going to do something. I'm not going to tell you yet. But you're going to do something. And this is incrementBy. because but we created the increment by, so it receives the payload, interestingly enough. So increment by, let's do 1, and it is not dispatching because I didn't dispatch it. Dispatch so in the on click, this is not the very recommended. You should have the function, all of these anonymous function should be on another function, you get me, like increment by, and this is not dispatching, so use dispatch on click increment by. I think this increment by.
Whoa!
The whole problem is that I'm trying to change this, okay? And I'm changing the entire state. What? Can you believe that? Yes, that happens. So that increment by 1, but it's count. So that was the issue. Remember to change what you need to change. State.count equals to state.count, and then subtract the payload. See, no BS. You saw me go to the
Hopelessness.
and then I realized that I was trying to mutate the whole state. Probably a bunch of you guys saw that. And yeah, I think this app is almost finished. The idea of this is that we don't need to do the drop drilling anymore. We don't need to pass the count here. There's no need for it. Okay, so you just remove this, and also from the grandson is not needed, but it needs to print count. Okay, so now the son is not passing anything to the grandson, but the grandson wants to show the count, but the grandson is not passing the prop. Okay, we're not even asking for the prop. So what do we need to know to do now? Okay, first of all, we can show the sun that now it is not asking for the sun is asking for the prop. No. Okay, so if we have an increment by, it will make sense to have an input type number with the value of by. That's what I'm gonna use. Okay, so by doesn't exist, but const by set by equals to use state let's keep it as 1. Okay, so on this changing, I'm gonna take the event and we're gonna set by to the event target value. Okay, so what we have here is something that we need to see on the console. Grandson count is not defined. Okay, yeah, the problem that we know already. Grandson is asking for something that doesn't exist. Well, it exists, but we're not defining it yet. So let's comment that out for a minute and increment by 1. Increment by 1. If we up this, it increments by 1 still. Why? Because the increment by 1 is not using the by. So now it's gonna be like if I do this, oh, it is okay, so it is concatenating. That is another issue. The concatenation, it is concatenating 10 and 10 and 10 and 10 because of the nature of JavaScript. So let's do a parse int. Remember, I'm not editing any of this, you're seeing my errors. And parse int increment by, let's restart. What if we do this 10? Now it's working as expected. By 5, now it's 5 5 5. Now let's say 5. We can add here a line jump and then a line jump here. As I said, I'm not editing anything. That's why this is VS, no VS code. Yeah, by 1, by 2. Okay. So this, okay, so this is a nan. Nan means it's not a number. So when you encounter with a nan, you first have to make sure that that this is nan then we're gonna parse it, otherwise no. So if we have empty, it's not going to do anything. If we add some, because that's what happened before, remember, it was empty, the increment by was empty, so it created a nan. So now we're checking if it's none before we define the increment by. We dispatch the increment by. So now it's like this. So the sun is showing. We are cheating here because the idea of all of this is that we don't need to do any drop drilling in order to show the counter here, right? So the sun doesn't have to pass the prop to the grandson. So what do we do now? So we're gonna bring this logic I think the only thing we need is this, actually, in the grandson. And it is going to tell you that you need to import this. Import. Hopefully it does it automatically. It should do it automatically. Because I don't know why, but I'm realizing that my IDE is very dependent on AI. So import what I am useSelector from React Redux, this one. And now we can show the counter. I hope I didn't make this more confusing, but you saw me failing, you saw me doing things that shouldn't be done. But to be fair, we created the store from scratch without documentation or anything. So I know this was going to happen, but I didn't know exactly when. So the error was, remember the error please, was that I didn't have this. I was like that. So I was mutating the whole state. And no, you have to do it like that, because it's the count. So the sun is now not the sun. The only function of the sun is to show the grandson. See the logic of the grandson. The sun has nothing. It just imports the grandson and shows the grandson count. And the count, we're getting it from the store, from the big store. So just to finish up, let's clean a little bit. This function should be in its own handle increment. So we have a const handle increment equals to amount. Well, this we have it like this. The amount is not needed because we're getting it from the state by. And Also, the unchanged can be in another function. The unchanged can be in another function, and everything can be cleaned up. But I think as far as it is right now, it works, and we prove, or we created a store, two functions. The decrementBy function will work in the same way. DecrementBy, it will do the same but backwards. Yeah, I need to say backwards. So yeah, I think by this time you are a little bit more familiarized with Redux, and hopefully this didn't make it more confusing for you, but I hope this error you catch it. I hope you I hope you were able to catch the error and like screaming at the screen like, hey, you are missing this. So yeah, please subscribe and click the like button, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next hour.